Welcome, everyone. This is the International Peace Coalition. This is our 87th meeting in a row. I want to thank everyone for joining us, new and regular, who have been coming on these 87 weeks to create true peace in the world. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your host today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed, the co-hosts of this discussion. And I'll just say right off the bat, I'd like to remind people why we created this forum. And we wanted to unite the peace movement around the world because, quite frankly, there's been a lot of interventions to prevent dialogue amongst different groups, whether that's from the left, the right, whatever in between. But if we're actually going to create real peace in the world and accomplish this, we have to unite the populations around the planet to make this happen, coordinate what we're doing with our different groups and collaborate together to make this possible. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us. We've had a lot of very exciting and wild, it's a cold mixed bag, whatever you want to say, happening here in the United States, but it's also been very important what we're doing to shape the process here in the US and around the globe. So to open us up today, we're going to have Helga LaRouche, the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. So please go ahead, Helga.
Yes, hello to all of you. While the world is clearly still in a state of absolute tension, trying to evaluate what is the changes or what are the changes by the new Trump administration for the world perspective for peace or not peace. So the signs and signals seem to be very contradictory, to say the least. While there are positive signs on the one side, not least by the nominations of Tulsi Gabbard and Kesh Patel for respective posts in the administration. The hearings have been going on in the last several days, but the large crisis points still await resolution. Now, concerning the situation in Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, who is the chief of the main directorate of intelligence, he basically said something which was quite unique and new coming from the Ukrainian side, namely that unless there are very serious negotiations until the summer, there is a danger that Ukraine may lose its state existence, its existential threat. So, if the Ukraine signals a willingness to negotiate, and President Putin also said again that he is ready to negotiate, and one can assume that Trump's intention to resolve that conflict quickly absolutely remains. However, it is absolutely mandatory that the Russian basic security interest, which is Ukraine not in NATO, and security guarantees of various forms, that must be upheld. So that is a little silver lining on the horizon, that this horror situation may soon come to an end and a negotiated peace could be possible. More worrisome is the situation clearly in the Middle East, where President Trump has basically repeated his initial statement, his proposal to relocate all the Palestinians from the Gaza to Egypt, to Jordan, and even to Indonesia, which was rejected by all of these governments. And, this is obviously not in the interest of the Palestinians, who always have upheld, despite all the incredible suffering, the concept of sumud, steadfastness, and the idea of holding on to their land, even if it's covered with rubble and debris. Now, the big question is, what will happen after this ceasefire phase 2? Will it happen? Will the fighting reconvene? as it is going on in the West Bank. Many people are saying that now there is a repetition of what happened in Gaza in the West Bank. But, the question is, what will be the solution put on the table for the Gaza peace? Now, we are promoting the Oasis Plan. We are currently from the Schiller Institute and the International Peace Coalition in an international mobilization to put again the concept of the Oasis Plan on the table, which would be a general economic development of the entire region, starting with the production of lots of fresh water for irrigation for eventually the entire region, and naturally going along with a two-state solution, and the whole question of a permanent peace. Now, what is the big question, and maybe some of the participants can also shed light on that in this discussion, what is behind President Trump's idea of relocating the Palestinians? Could it be that the plan, which was issued for the first time by Prime Minister Netanyahu in May 24, called the Plan Gaza 2035, Plan for the Transformation of the Gaza Strip, is that what is meant? And in that plan, which was published by the Jerusalem Post, by various other publications, you could see animations with wonderful skyscrapers and, obviously luxury buildings. There was no mention of a two-state solution, and there was basically, no reference other than the authority of this Gaza Strip should be nominally under the Palestinian Authority, but as I said, no reference to a two-state solution. And what was emphasized instead was the East-West trade route, historically Gaza being located in this unique position, also in terms of the Baghdad-Egypt trade route and the Yemen-Europe trade route. Now, we will for sure know more about that on February 4th, when Prime Minister Netanyahu will arrive in Washington for discussions, obviously, with President Trump. And, then I think the secret will be lifted. What are the actual plans, and are they an acceptable proposal or not? Now, Trump basically will also discuss, obviously, with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Lebanon question, Iran. This is also extremely important, and one can only say Trump had promised that he will be there to end wars and not start new ones. Dr. Shay Har-Swi, who is the former Director General of the Strategic Affairs Ministry, he gave an interview to Ma'arif where he basically suggested, that the nuclear issue in Iran should be negotiated with the International Atomic Energy Agency, basically overseeing the process. And the Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi warned that any attack on the nuclear facilities in Iran would have catastrophic, disastrous consequences. So, I think that we should really, obviously try to find out what are the actual plans for Gaza. I still think that any proposal, like rebuilding Gaza for luxury buildings and, trade route hub, could be linked to the famous NEOM plan in Saudi Arabia, which is this rather strange idea of building a ski resort in the desert, which doesn't seem to be a prime priority of the region. But I think we have to see, and we have to fight for the Oasis Plan, because the Oasis Plan looks at the entire map from India to the Mediterranean, from the Caucasus to the Gulf region, because this entire region must be looked at as one. And there must be a peace solution uplifting the populations of these war-torn regions. You know, you have Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, the West Bank, Gaza. All of these regions are extremely tortured, you know, destroyed for many years of war. And one needs to do something for the population and not just for the upper crust. Now, the overall situation obviously is very much in flux. I think the Europeans are still not quite clear. There is a huge battle in the EU between those people who favor rapprochement with Russia and China versus those who are on a complete war path, like NATO against Russia. Mark Rutte, the General Secretary of NATO, is still talking about that Europe must become war ready, that they should spend 5% of their budget for military expenditures, and that NATO must be prepared for a war with Russia in no later than 4 to 5 years, which is completely ludicrous because it's based on a narrative and not on facts. Now, in Poland, for example, pupils in the ground school in the first years are now supposed to learn shooting for the coming war with Russia, which is complete insane. And just today, just as we are speaking here, there is a vote in the German parliament on the question of what will be the new law or not new law for dealing with the migrant issue, which is it's basically, it's a very loaded question. We can discuss it later in the discussion, but it is the question, will Europe go in the direction of a rapprochement over Ukraine with Russia, having some kind of a peaceful cooperation with the BRICS countries, or will Europe be in a war mode no matter what Trump will do? And there are those in Europe who are clearly in favor of escalating that, which is a no-win situation, but it shows you the absolute madness of some of these people. Now, I think we are very much still in a period of shaping the way the world will go, and that is why I can only welcome the discussion we are going to have, because this is one of the places where new ideas how to intervene are being discussed every week. And I think this week it is for sure the Oasis Plan, which must be upfront. That's my initial remarks.
Thank you, Helga, for that opening and thorough overview of what's going on. We definitely will have that discussion today. Next, I'd like to have Mossi Raz, who's a former Knesset member and former Director General of Peace Now in Israel. Thank you so much for joining us, Mossi Raz. Oh, you're muted, my friend. You're muted. There we go.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anastasia, and thank you, Helga, for your presentation. I'm sorry that I have to go to another place in 35 minutes, so I will not listen to all of you. I was 10 days ago with a group of 11 former Israeli members of Knesset, among them 4 ministers. One of them was the head of the security services, who met President Abbas in Ramallah. We still believe, even if we are minority in Israel and maybe minority in Palestine too, I'm not sure, that just solution is not transforming people from one place to one place, and not going on with this war, but accepting actually the Arab League Peace Initiative for 2 states in 67 borders. Many Palestinians would feel that it is not just for them, and many Israelis would feel the same. And but of course, when you do a compromise, you have to compromise. President Abbas expressed once again his support that, and he said actually he condemned the operation in October 7. I say crimes in October 7. He didn't say the word crimes. But he said that again and again that there is a difference between him and probably Palestinian majority, or at least large group of Palestinians to the Hamas. He attacked Hamas in his speech again and again. We were criticized in Israel. Actually, nobody criticized us on meeting the president, but we were criticized because 4 days after the meeting.
Mossi Raz, your
Yes.
audio is just a little bit soft. Would you mind speaking a little bit higher or
Okay.
closer to the microphone?
Okay.
Thank you.
We were criticized. Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, I can hear you much better
Okay.
now. Thank you.
We were criticized not for the meeting with the president, but because 4 days after the meeting, the president called one of the prisoners who was released last Saturday, was actually this prisoner murdered a 2-year-old Israeli girl. Yeah, I can understand why calling released prisoners, but you can pick somebody else to call too. Anyhow, of course, Palestinians have a legitimate right to resist the occupation, but I don't see killing killing anybody. I don't see us resistance, but of course not a 2-year-old girl. Right now, we are in a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and this ceasefire is very fragile. Israel and Hamas are probably happy now because Hamas is releasing some of the Israeli hostages, and Israel is releasing some of the Palestinian prisoners, not only Hamas, but other prisoners too. Many people are happy about that. The question is, what is going to be in the end of this phase one of the agreement? Actually, there is no agreement about releasing everybody in each side, and there is no agreement yet for ceasefire, long-term ceasefire. And ceasefire is not enough. Actually, as peace organizations, we cannot find ourselves in the side of Netanyahu, who want to go on with the war, and his supporters who want to occupy territories. But we cannot find ourselves in the side of Hamas and Iran, who actually committing crimes again and again. We should find ourselves with the majority of Israelis and Palestinians who want to end the war, who want to find a just solution, even if they see that maybe in a different way, but might recognize that the other side has his right for self-determination and as a secure and independent state. Then we can maybe have some disagreements about details. And I do believe that even in those very bad days that we see extremists in both sides getting more power, because the easiest thing is to say the other side is guilty, the other side is extreme, the other side is committing war crimes, and it's both right, unfortunately. So we must find a way as peace movements in Israel, in Palestine, and all over the world to support the idea who says Palestine has Palestinian people has the right for self-determination and for a Palestinian independent state. Israel has the right for independent state. 67 borders are more or less with swap and with other with other mechanisms to make it easier to the people on the ground, Palestinians and Israelis, are the borders. And I think that we should hear more support in the world, in Palestine and in Israel, to this idea. And we should hear more people in Israel, in Palestine, in the world who condemn crimes, whatever those crimes are. And maybe a few last sentences. I feel, meeting the Palestinian, after meeting the Palestinian president, this is not what he said, but this is my feeling, that he wants very much, he said that he wants the Palestinian Authority to go in Gaza, and he wants European aid, I mean, on the ground, maybe some Arabic aid, but I think he trusts more. He didn't say that, this is only my feeling. Trust more European states, and we must find this help to the Palestinian future state. Maybe, of course, many Palestinians are not really supporting right now the Palestinian Authority as it is, but the Palestinian Authority should be way more transparent and way more strong. And if it is like that, I think all the world should support such a creation of the beginning of a Palestinian state and two-state solution, which bring peace to this to the Palestinians and the Israelis. And again, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mossi, for that. It's useful to hear from you and what's happening on the ground and the process that you're part of. I wanted to ask, I know you have to get going, but I wanted to ask Helga if you wanted to respond to Mossi Raz before he has to leave.
Only very briefly, I think what you are saying about that one has to take into account the interest of the other is one of the most fundamental principles to arrive at peace. And I think that a just solution can only be arrived at if indeed the interest of every other in the region is being considered. And that is naturally, we connect this always with the question of development, that the new name for peace is development. And that, that's why I was putting the emphasis on the question of what will be the actual plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, because it has to be, the question of the relocation of the Palestinians, I think is, from the standpoint of the principles you just laid out about the two-state solution, obviously also a total contradiction. So if you have any knowledge about what are the actual plans, for the peace negotiations, if the phase 2 and phase 3 are successful, I think it would be very helpful for us if you would share this with us, or else maybe we can discuss it at some future occasion if you don't have that information.
I don't have that information, and I'm not sure that there are plans, not in Trump's administrations and not in the Israeli government. We know plans. The Arab League Peace Initiative is a plan. The Geneva Initiative is a plan. The initiative of Prime Minister Olmert with former Prime Minister Olmert with former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nasser al-Kidwa, is a plan. And I think that we have to go to follow these plans and not the plans of the administration in Washington or the government in Jerusalem. Those are the plans that can bring prosperity to this region. I don't see Trump's plan of relocating people. I don't see it happen. And even if it is, it's not going to solve the problem, the conflict between the Palestinians who live here and the Israelis who live here, and both they have the rights to live here and to live in peace and security and freedom. So even if he moves 1 or 2 million, it doesn't change anything. And of course, he cannot move 1 or 2 million, but even if he does, it doesn't change it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think we'll definitely keep this discussion going in terms of figuring out what these plans are and what we can do in organizing for this peace through development project. I don't know, Helga, if you have anything else you'd like before we continue.
No, other than that we are really trying to put the Oasis plan on the table because, it's definitely a plan which would take into account the interests of all the different states and peoples in the region. And I think, hopefully that would be when, President Trump and Xi Jinping meet, a topic of discussion because we had a conference of the Schiller Institute on the topic of the Oasis Plan beginning of December, and there we had Chinese professor Zhang Weiwei, who said that China has the capability of, basically irrigating large areas of desert and making them agricultural and forestry and so forth. And I think that would be the game changer for the region. So since President Trump is, somebody who has also a sense of building, hopefully, between these two presidents, that would be a topic and change the entire parameters of the region. That would be my hope. And so we keep organizing for it.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we'll continue this discussion, and I'm sure Ray McGovern will have quite a bit to say on this. But next, I'd like to have Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst and co-founder of the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Please go ahead, Ray.
Can I be heard?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me back. It's always good to hear positive planning. In other words, alternatives to the raging wars and conflicting interests that go on in the world. The Oasis Plan is a paramount example of that. And when Helga says, as I just took a note here, that we really need to pay attention to the interests of the other, okay? I would just say that it is axiomatic that there can be no individual security without mutual security. This was expressed in many documents, including European documents after the fall of the Soviet Union. In other words, the golden rule, right? The golden rule is not just some sort of platitude. It's become a existential, it's become an imperative, okay? There can be no security unless you know something about the other's feelings of insecurity. If you are, for example, trying to enlist Ukraine into NATO. Now, that's a paramount example of what we're involved in here. And it's very interesting that President Trump has expressed in a very strange but refreshing way that he too understands that principle as it pertains to Ukraine. Right out of the blue, he said, I can understand why the Russians wouldn't want an armed member of NATO right up against its border. I can understand that. Wow. Well, maybe once the Ukraine thing is put aside, which I imagine it will be within the next half year, and maybe he could apply that same thinking to how the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Muslims, as well as the Jewish people in Israel, feel about mutual security. That's a hope, but I think it's not an elusive hope. I think it could happen. Now, Helga mentioned the hearing yesterday with Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard. I was privileged to watch the whole thing undistracted because, well, we had arrangements to do that. And then I was asked to comment on it 2 minutes after it was over. I did that with Nima Al-Kharashad. You can see that on my website. The link is there, raymcgovern.com. I had lots to say about one of the burning issues that the senators were raising, namely Ed Snowden. Now, I say Ed Snowden because there's a whole half generation of people in this country who never heard of Ed Snowden or don't know who he is or what he means. And I went into some detail, not only with respect to why he did what he did, namely releasing troves of documents showing that our national security apparatus, and specifically the National Security Agency, was playing fast and loose with our Constitution, specifically the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits illegal searches and seizures, that is, searches and seizures without a warrant. Now, that was a core thing that came up here, and it was replete with irony, because these same senators, when they saw what Ed Snowden revealed, they changed the law. They instituted new laws. They took into account these gross violations of our Constitution, and yet the Democrats who were trying to prevent Tulsi Gabbard from becoming confirmed were just harping on the fact, well, don't you think that Ed Snowden is a traitor? Don't you think he should be convicted of treason? And Miss Gabbard, to a great credit, said, look, he broke the law, right? But I have instituted all manner of steps here, which, if I'm confirmed, will prevent this from happening again. Step one is, why don't we stop this illegal activity? Then there'll be no reason. There'll be no cause for whistleblowers. Hello. And then she had other steps which be totally legal, including the last step. If a whistleblower does not get satisfaction through legal means, come to me directly. I will have a direct line, a red line, or whatever you call it, to whistleblowers. So, were they satisfied with that? Of course not. This is not a logical thing. This is pretty much a really, really serious problem. Why? Because if Tulsi Gabbard becomes the director of national intelligence, and if Kash Patel, perish the thought, becomes the head of FBI, and when I say perish the thought, there are all manner of people that Kash Patel knows committed all manner of misdemeanors and felonies in previous regimes, in previous administrations. So there is a great fear that Kash Patel, knowing where all the bodies are buried, and in cooperation with Tulsi Gabbard, if they get confirmed, wow, all hell will break loose, because these people cannot be assured that they won't be prosecuted, maybe even put in jail. And I include in that company James Comey, former director of the FBI, John Brennan, former head of the CIA. They are sweating blood right now. Now, do they have a way of influencing these senators? Well, I hate to tell you, but yes, they do. They only need a couple of senators to turn against Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel. And the way they do it is the tried and trusted technique, the tried and true techniques of J. Edgar Hoover. They have dirt on all these people. Can they turn enough to prevent the confirmation? My God, I hope not, but it looks like maybe they can. Now, what's all this mean? it means that there's a real Donnybrook going on here. Now, when they talked about Tulsi Gabbard, and they tried to say that, get her to admit that Edward Snowden was responsible for taking great personal risk in revealing these gross violations of the Constitution, which legislators in our House and Senate did a lot to repair. Okay, there's a section 702, which is still operative and which still is really extra constitutional in my view, but it's better. Okay, now Tulsi Gabbard said, well, I could accept that one. I used to be opposed to it, but with the amendments, I can accept that. What does it mean? Why do I raise it here? That means that these spy agencies, first and foremost, the NSA, and to a degree, the CIA, once they intercept a message, a foreign target message involving an American name, a US citizen name, well, they're free to pursue that. Okay. The US citizen becomes a target, and everyone that US citizen communicates with, and everyone who communicates with that US who communicate. So these are called little hops. Okay, that's what happens. So why am I saying this? Well, because each one of those senators knows that not only does the FBI have dirt, okay, let's just say it, have blackmail material on what one or two of these senators have done with not only young girls, but maybe young boys. They're going to put that into play. That's the FBI side. Okay. How about NSA? What do they have? What do they have intercepting messages, ostensibly targeted at foreign targets, but reflect Senator so-and-so or Representative so-and-so? So the issue is joined. And the supreme irony is that, number one, Snowden's materials changed the law. The senators know that the law is changed, and they just approved it to exist again. And by virtue of that, they know they are susceptible to collection by technical means, namely intercepted conversations by the NSA themselves. So let us all hang tight and see if there are enough, if there's enough integrity on the part of the senators to approve both Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. These would be the big nominees. Now, people say, well, how can you support any nominee of Donald Trump? I mean, this is a real manifestation of what I call the Trump derangement syndrome. In other words, anything Trump does has to be ipso facto terribly bad, okay? Well, I happen to think that these two nominees are far head and shoulders above all the other nominees. They're the best we can expect, for God's sake. So live with it. Get real. He's the president now. These are the best we can expect. That's what, it just says to me that people who get their bodies involved. I'll finish with this. I understand that two of our Schiller Institute people, Tynan and Jose, insinuated themselves into the Tulsi Gabbard hearing yesterday. They were there. Okay. Now, as you know, both have been courageous enough to speak out when needed, when appropriate, against what blather is going on from the dais. This time, they were rather circumspect. In other words, whoa, we got in by a fluke. Let's see what's going on here before we do anything to disrupt it. It was a good hearing. Tulsi Gabbard gave an incredibly good account of herself. So they were there, but in this case, they chose not to disrupt. what I'm saying here is you have to put yourself in position to be able to do that kind of thing, okay? And that means put your body into it. And as you know, I'm a favorite of Daniel Berrigan, the Jesuit priest who protested so much against Vietnam. I'm going to choose a new quote from him to end my little spiel here. And if I can find it, yeah, there it is. So Berrigan said a lot of things, many of which I've quoted before, but he also said this, it's one sentence, so please listen carefully. Quote, the difference between doing nothing and doing something is everything. Okay? We can all do something. And that's for our consciences and our look at our own abilities to speak out, to enter personally, take some personal risks, as many of the Schiller Institute people have done. I understand they've been combing through Congress for the last several days. So think about what you can do. You. And just remember that the difference between doing nothing and doing something is everything. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ray. I very much appreciate what you're saying on these hearings with Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel, also with Kennedy as well, who would be a very interesting addition into the cabinet. Wherever people stand on agreeing or disagreeing with various things of them, I think you're right. This is the best we're going to get. So let's run with it and blow this thing up and get something positive in motion within the administration. So I think that's an excellent way to put it. I wanted to ask Helga, because this whole discussion around whistleblowers, the Ed Snowden case, Julian Assange, all of this stuff is being blown open. It's being reopened right now, including with Ed Snowden intervening during the hearing, saying, "Hey, I told Tulsi, don't worry about me. Go ahead, just leave me behind. We just need to get you in there and, don't worry about defending whistleblowers. Just get yourself in there," which was then read into the hearing, what he said. I think this is really this whole discussion that's happening right now, and it's being live broadcast with millions of people, not just Americans, but all over the world watching this go on. So I wanted to see, Helga, if you had a response to Ray, and also, if there's any more discussion around the Oasis plan.
Well, first of all, Ray, I want to thank you for being here. You are refreshing, like always. And obviously, the principle you pointed out with the issue of whistleblowers is very fundamental. I mean, if I look at it correctly, then it's mentioned implicitly in the Declaration of Independence. It pertains to the right of the people to correct when the government does wrong. And if you take that right away, then you are in a dictatorship. So I think it's extremely important. I just have a question to you, because it seems to me that this resolution, or paragraph 702, is like a rubber paragraph, because as I have read somewhere, it is functioning to the 6 degrees, to the 6th degree. With other words, that everybody was in contact with somebody who was in contact with somebody. And if you follow that through, by the 6th degree, you have the whole world population accountable. So don't you think that this is a problem?
Well, thanks for mentioning that, Helga. These are called hops, all right? So you identify one American citizen, that's one hop. And then all the people that citizen associates with is another hop. Now, let's say he associates with a Google search. Oh, well, that puts you on to about 2 billion people in the world. I mean, it's ridiculous. And when I talked about the irony of this, the power of the deep state is so strong that these senators themselves approved that plan. And irony? Well, they know that it's being used against them if they ever talk to any foreign person, or if any foreign person mentions them or people. So yeah, it's ridiculous. The irony is that they know that they themselves are subjected to this kind of thing, and not only the FBI dirt, okay? So the issue is joined here. The deep state has a record of what they did to try to prevent Trump from being elected in the first place. We know just recently that John Brennan, the head of the CIA, identified 26 people on Trump's campaign in 2016 before the election and said, we can't collect on these, but hey, how about the British or the Australians or the Canadians or the New Zealanders or the Australians? These Five Eyes, they can collect them, and so whoop, please collect on these 20. That's what happened. It's on the record now. Okay, now is that legal? Oh my God, no. Okay, that's collecting on American people. So the ironies are replete. Brennan and Comey are in the dock already, and you see Brennan on the TV. He's just kind of, he's catatonic. He just blah. And so MSNBC is letting him blabber, but NBC is not going to have the final word on this. It's going to come out on the judgments of the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee with respect to Kash Patel. I can't say this, but I've almost never seen a more tectonic time, a liminal time. Who's going to win? Deep state or the people that Trump sensibly promoted to be Director of National Intelligence and head of the FBI? I wouldn't venture a guess at this point. The New York Times today, let me just give you one more little morsel here. Here's the New York Times today with a major article to say, why wouldn't Tulsi Gabbard say that Edward Snowden is a traitor? Okay, why he says treason? Why can't you say treason? Well, Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado, he was the toughest questioner, says the New York Times. So he said, Miss Gabbard, on the night of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, February 2022, you wrote that the war could have been avoided if the Biden administration and NATO had acknowledged Russia's security concerns. Did you say that? Yes or no? Gabbard, I believe you are reading from my tweet, Mr. Bennett. Yes, that's the answer. Well, guess what? She was right. And who else has said precisely the same thing? Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO. And he said in a faux pas grande on the 7th of September 2023 before the EU Parliament, and I quote, Putin's precondition for not invading was no Ukraine in NATO. We rejected that. So he went to war to prevent more NATO. End quote. So, yeah, here is Senator Bennett blithely condemning Tulsi Gabbard for telling the truth far before Stoltenberg inadvertently admitted it, but that happens to be the case, okay? That Russia was unprovoked? Give me a break. Everyone who is kind of informed on this knows that Russia was well provoked. Now, not only Stoltenberg, but more important, President Trump himself has pretty much said that when he says, I can understand why the Russians wouldn't want NATO in Ukraine. Well, that's big. That's about 80% of the problem. My prediction is that either Trump will acquiesce in the situation that now exists where Russia has won, or there will be some talks which will allow both to create some sort of graceful way to end the thing, and that should happen soon. I wouldn't predict it would be that successful, but we'll have to see, because this big admission, first by Stoltenberg and now by Donald Trump himself, what they're saying is what Helga said before. There is no individual security for any nation without mutual security. The golden rule has become a existential imperative. Let's recognize that and proceed from those premises. Thanks for letting me go on here with my answer.
Well, thank you very much for that, Ray, and we appreciated the extra morsel. It's good to just keep emphasizing what this whole process has been. I was completely shocked. I never thought I'd be this shocked by watching a hearing like this, but I was quite shocked by some of the really nonsensical things that a lot of people in the Senate were saying. And actually, before we go into the discussion period, I wanted to have you mentioned Jose and Kynan. I wanted to have both of them jump on and give a report. They were actually there in the room, as you said, by a fluke. But if we can pull up Jose and Kynan, do we have you there?
Do you have me? Am I here? Hello?
I do. I see you. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So, yes, I was in the room by a fluke, as Ray McGovern said. I was in Washington for the last 2 days, actually. And, just before I talk about what happened on the day of the briefing, I want to talk about what happened before the hearing. I want to talk about what happened the day before. I went down to Washington, D.C. with about 25, 26 other people or so. And what happened was we hit every Senate office with the Liars Bureau pamphlet. And I went down with a contingent of people from New York areas. This is the New York, New Jersey area. There were people from Maryland, and there were even people from your great state, or your second great state, Ray, because I know your first great state is the Bronx. Your second great state, North Carolina. Our mutual friend Morgan Blythe made the 6-hour drive up north. Yeah, up north to come and lobby with us as we went Senate to Senate office, giving them the latest statement from Dennis Kucinich, giving them the Liars Bureau pamphlet, urging these aides and these staffers and these people in the Senate offices give this material to their legislative advisors or to their judicial advisors, whoever is advising the senator, or to the senator himself, give them this pamphlet. And I stressed the thing about where people came from, because I drove almost 4.5 hours from New York to DC. We had a North Carolina contingent of 2 people who came up, and it was a 6-hour drive for them. This did make the difference as we were going office to office, talking to these various people, various staffers, various aides, and saying, look, we came down the day before the hearing because we want to see Tulsi Gabbard confirmed as DNI. And we think it that important that we came up here. In fact, we went to the North Carolina senator's office and we explained to them the long drive that Tom Tillis, and the lady was like, well, this is why you should schedule a hearing in advance, because sometimes people can't make the trip to DC and we're very busy. But we held our ground and said, no, we drove up and we want to meet with somebody. So one of the staffers did go see if there was somebody available for us to talk with, and that was very much the vibe that was felt around the Senate office. We walked into Senator Graham's office, Senator Lindsey Graham. I mean, the worst of the worst. His staffers were like petrified when they saw us walk in there. They were like, we split up into 3 teams. I had about 7 people on my team. We walked into Senator Graham's office with 7 people, said, this is a contingent of people from all over the country. We want this material. to be given to the senator, and we want the senator to confirm Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, everybody in the room was just like wide-eyed, and they didn't know what to do. And there was a staffer who was walking, and he tripped because that's how shocked they were that we were actually there to lobby and petition on getting Tulsi and Kash Patel confirmed. Now, that was just a day. I'll leave some more for Kynan to talk about if he wishes to. Then there was the actual day of the hearing. There are some things you don't see when you watch it live. For example, Tulsi Gabbard walked into the room with Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton is the chair of that committee. That's not something that was televised. That was something for the senators in the room. Now, I was disheartened to learn this, but apparently Meghan McCain, the daughter of John McCain, is a friend of Tulsi Gabbard's, and she sat in the front row. She was there to show her support. She was also introduced by two senators that I think was televised, Joni Ernst and Senator Burr. But what you also didn't see was the fact that senators were walking in and out, like the senators who were in their chairs. They were leaving the room, going behind a closed door, leaving for long periods of time, and then coming back. This was before they had to speak and even after they spoke. And after the Republicans spoke, there was a follow-up period. Not a single Republican senator was still in the room, but all the Democrats were, to continue to torture Tulsi, right? So these are just some things that you don't see. Now, while we were there in the morning, I got to speak with some people on the line who were there from 7:45 a.m. to make sure to get into the room. And all I'll say is that we were able to hand the Liars Bureau pamphlet to Tulsi's immediate entourage. I'll put it that way. So the chances of her seeing and what we were passing out, I hope, may have gotten into her hands, but we will see. Yeah, that was basically our day. And unless Kynan, you want to come in here and add more about what we did on Wednesday, and then maybe I would like to hear your response, Ray.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I think you've laid out a lot of the basic details, Jose, on our deployment. I, of course, was with my own team, and we managed to cover a lot of offices and give them our Liars Bureau pamphlet, along with the statement that former Congressman Dennis Kucinich had issued in favor of Tulsi Gabbard's nomination. We also, just to speak about the development side of this, we did bring them the Schiller Institute pamphlet on the development drive, no more refugees, no more wars, build 1 billion jobs across the world, of course, because, the immigration issue has been prominent, and, Trump has issued these mass deportations. There was the whole business with Colombia, as I'm sure a lot of people know. But, the only moral way to confront this is to actually go with this economic development perspective, work with countries to actually bring about prosperity in these nations in which there's been nothing but war, but poverty, largely brought about by us. So we gave them that. And, it's not like you expect much most of the time, but we did ask to speak with some of the aides. And in a few cases, they actually did speak with us, and we were able to give them a larger briefing. So it just shows you, you don't know what you're going to expect when you go into these things, kind of like what Jose and I did when we got into the hearing. We weren't expecting to get in. And just a few insights on the hearing itself. I was, kind of dismayed, and really was expecting Tulsi to just kind of bow down and say what she needed to say to get the nomination. But, as Ray mentioned, she clearly didn't do that. She was asked over and over again to denounce Snowden as a traitor, and she didn't do it. And also, I think Greenwald pointed this out in a program he did about the nomination, but she had sort of walked back her opposition to Section 702 of the FISA Act. But at the hearing, she had mentioned that we need to make sure that there are basic provisions so that there isn't warrantless surveillance against Americans. So she kind of went back to her principal stance that she had originally had against Section 702. So I thought it was really uplifting. And of course, these people aren't perfect, but you have a different sense of these things when you're actually doing the work and organizing rather than just sitting on the side observing and criticizing what people do. It's not exactly productive. Just one more thing I would mention, because of course there is an international importance to the organizing that we do. I had done work with a Japanese psychologist by the name of Dr. Akiko Mikamo, who made a documentary about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Her father had survived that, and it's one of the few personal accounts of that tragedy that we have. I would just reference that because it is the 80th anniversary of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. And this is crucial to addressing this question of war or peace. And we want to tell that to the American people, in the form of the presidency, that we have to bring about a change in foreign policy. We have to work with other nations. The BRICS, for example, has provided an alternative to war. So I think this is the way we need to move forward. And I'll just leave it there. Thanks for letting me speak.
Great. But the thing that I noted when we were talking yesterday was you were saying that in all of these different meetings you were having in the different offices, the phones were off the hook, that they actually had to turn off the ringer because it was just constantly off the hook. And I think after these hearings being broadcast, I mean, if it was off the hook before, imagine what it's going to be now and seeing what people are seeing. I think this is a sleeping giant waiting to emerge, quite frankly. But Ray, if you have any response to Kynan and Jose, please go ahead.
Well, I learned belatedly that one of my senators, Senator Budd, is on the House Intelligence Committee. He just took the place of Marco Rubio. And so I spent the day before and the morning of getting through to his staff on the phone. Now, initially, his local staff here in Raleigh was not very sympathetic until I cashiered my Bronx accent and I adopted a kind of Southern accent. And I said, I really have to talk to him and talk to her. I started to talk to her a little bit. And she put me directly in touch with the Washington people. And I got through and I was able to say, look, I wrote a long "your opinion counts" thing on your website. Dig it out, show it to the senator. You only have 20 minutes. He opened at 9. The hearing began at 10, I guess it was. Yeah, they have a whole hour. So that's what I did. That's all I could do here in Raleigh, North Carolina. But it was something, I quote Berrigan again. The difference between doing nothing and doing something is everything. And I just close by quoting another prophet named Cesar Chavez. Okay. Now, what Tynan and Jose did, and what that horde of people from New York and New Jersey and North Carolina did, okay, is exemplified in what Cesar Chavez told his people when he come up with the idea. Hey guys, let's do a grape boycott. And what was the reaction he got? Cesar, that sounds great, but that was enough. We can't do that. There aren't enough of us. And Cesar says, there are enough of us, but nothing's going to happen if we don't do action. Okay. So again, each of us has some way of doing action. Okay. we choose that way, and then we go ahead and do it, for God's sake. The stakes are very high right now. Do it before it's too late. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Ray. Well, I will just say, because we will be going to the discussion period, if Helga, if you want to respond at all, you're welcome to. But I will tell people if they'd like to get in the queue to ask a question and to be part of the discussion, just choose raise your hand. If you're on over YouTube or any other platform, there's many different platforms that are broadcasting this. Just go to schillerinstitute.com and register on the link that's on the website to get the RSVP Zoom link. So that's how you can get on and be part of the dialogue. You must be registered to get on this discussion. So I'll ask Helga if she has any response, and then we'll continue.
No, I just want to say that the young people of the world should take Ray as an idol and as an example to follow.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the discussion period. So please RSVP to get the Zoom link to get on. We'll open up the raise hand option in the chat. And Dave, just let us know when we've cut the stream.